Welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex, and today I'm joined by the writer and director of the new short film Plastic Surgery, Guy Trevellyan. Set inside a hospital on the cusp of chaos, Plastic Surgery follows Dr. Terra, a young physician on her last shift before maternity leave, as she is confronted with a terrifying hidden threat, one already coursing through the bodies of her patients. As Dr. Terra races to understand what's unfolding, she's forced to confront a deeper question. Can she save others without first saving herself? The film is inspired by real-world medical research written during the COVID pandemic. It is a haunting metaphor for the ways plastic pollution is infiltrating our health. With microplastics now discovered in human arteries and organs, the film paints a visceral portrait of our toxic dependence, placing personal and planetary survival in the same breath. The film is currently at the beginning of its festival run, having recently screened at the Oscar-qualifying short film festival Holly Shorts. Guy has had a really interesting trajectory into the world of film, and he's spent the last few years kind of working as an assistant director with really big filmmakers such as Wes Anderson, Greta Gerwig, Sarnoski, Shawn Levy, and he's even now started his own production company, Nice Guy Pictures. So I'll be asking Guy all about this, about plastic surgery, and his work moving forward. So let's just jump straight into our conversation. Welcome to the show, Guy Trevellyan. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Before we dive into your short film, Plastic Surgery, I'd love to just rewind a little bit with you and just kind of get to know how you first kind of got into film and what made you want to kind of pursue film as a career path.
Yeah, so I grew up near a famous film location in Surrey called the Bourne Woods, which you'll probably remember the first battle scene in Gladiator. So it's home to many films and TV series throughout the years. So I think my love for cinema first started with going there on a bike with friends and stuff, and seeing the film sets and watching how it was all done and the kind of movie magic. And so from that young age, I was like, right, I mean, this is definitely something I wanted to do. And then I ended up doing history at university and archaeology because I had no idea what I wanted to do, like most people when they go to uni. And then after I finished my degree, I realized that I really wanted to give it a shot in film and see how I could do it. But I didn't really have any connections or any foot in the door. I didn't know anyone who worked in the film industry. So I ended up doing a master's in producing at the Met Film School. Because I kind of wanted to learn how you physically make a film. I thought if I could grasp that first, how, and gain the basic skills of how a film is put together, what makes a film, and all the departments and the script, the story, the development, and all the way through to the final product. So the Met Film School was great because we were able to do our own kind of short films and our own commercials in a very safe environment where you could kind of learn from your mistakes and you're able to work with like-minded people and finally meet people who are in the same boat as me, I think. So that kind of got me into the film industry, and then went from there. I graduated from the Met Film School and went straight into the working world, doing whatever job I could find.
Yeah, definitely. And you found your way into becoming an assistant director on some pretty major projects, which is huge. I mean, what does it mean to be an assistant director for our audience who may not know? How did you get those jobs, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, assistant directors, if you're listening in and you're wanting to learn exactly what an assistant director does, then we basically schedule the whole film or TV series. You kind of break down a script, you schedule it into a number of shooting days. You also organize the cast, you communicate with all the departments. That's kind of all in the pre-production. And when it comes to filming it, you run the floor. You're the people that are bringing everyone together, telling everyone what to do, to go where, here, how things are shot, how things are done, based on the schedule that you've made. And then you are basically the go-to person for the running order of the day, and keeping everything running and on time and on schedule. So it's a very critical role, but it's also very physical, which is why I loved it. And it gives you a window into every single department because you are communicating to every department as an assistant director. And I think that's what was such a good first step into this crazy industry, is because it allowed me to meet so many people from other departments and get basically a full experience of what it is to be on a floor, and how everything actually is physically made, and I could learn all the mistakes that you make along the way, and how to avoid them in the future. And then in terms of getting the jobs, well, that's harder. That's basically just selling my soul wherever I could to try get onto anything. No job is a bad job. I would do anything, any. I remember doing a lot of jobs for free, a lot of commercials and music videos for free. And you just find that one person on a shoot who might be a production manager, or could be anyone, who then goes, "Oh, you're free to do this. Oh, now it's paid," or and suddenly you get brought onto random other stuff, and you finally meet people. And then I think the first assistant directing job I did was on The Witcher, and
Oh wow.
I can't even remember how they got my CV. I think I just got a text message from the floor second saying, do you want to come on board, and that was my first kind of insight into a bigger kind of high end TV, and then into film. So yeah, that was kind of how it worked, really. But a lot of basically submitting to everything online that you could think of.
Nice, nice. And were you making short films at the same time as doing the assistant director job? Like, how were you, I guess, kind of fulfilling the creative side, which I assume was a big part of wanting to study film,
Yeah.
and then obviously with the kind of logistics side as well.
Yeah, so I guess as I was doing assistant directing, I was working on a lot of short films as a first assistant director. So I was firsting a lot of shorts, and then I started writing loads of different shorts and ideas. Nothing that I'd physically made at the time. I was really just writing and getting loads of my ideas down on paper and just experimenting with that, and actually physically writing something. Um, and then I and then I kind of worked on as a producer, and on a lot of the kind of development side for Artemisia Films, which was another company that I worked for, where we kind of built up a lot of their projects, which kind of which was really fun. But it wasn't really until we really had the strikes, I think, and I think I realized that there was a window where I could actually make this film, and I could pull in a lot of really good talent because everyone was available.
Yes, yeah,
It
yeah.
was a period in the industry where not many people were working, so that was really interesting. So I think I utilized that definitely to my benefit, and then finally made plastic surgery. But it's I wanted to spend that time learning from directors in the industry, and actually learn a lot from them before I made my first move into it.
Yes. Well, I would be interested to know about kind of some of those lessons, just to kind of name drop some of the directors that you've been working with as an assistant director: Wes Anderson, Greta Gerwig, Michael
Yeah,
Sarnoski, Shawn Levy, all very different storytellers as
yeah.
well. So I imagine you learned a lot from kind of very different creative environments. I'd love to know if there were any kind of particular aspects of how you now direct and write that was
Mm.
shaped by any of those guys.
Yeah, I think I definitely. I mean, I took so much from, and so much advice, and I learned so much from watching these amazing titans work. I mean, with Wes, he I think I learned mostly the importance of prep, working with him. How he works with an animatic and a storyboard is incredible. I mean, he
Mm.
basically had the film animated before they even make the film, which is amazing. So it's an incredible tool that the whole crew have access to. So, you look at his films, and they're incredibly detailed, but actually when it comes to shooting them on the day, everyone is so prepped and ready that there's little room for error. Like it flows and it works so well. And he was very good at creating a kind of film family, which is what I always wanted to be a part of, or and create myself as well, which is kind of where the crew's all isolating and staying in the same accommodation, and everyone is, basically there for 3-4 months, and you get very close with the crew. And I think that's very, and it becomes an experience rather than just, you're turning up to work every day. It's an amazing experience. And then you take that from Wes, with Greta, watching her style and how she kind of watches the actor's performance underneath the camera, and she barely uses a monitor. So she watches their physical raw performance is incredible. And then the high energy of Shawn Levy as well. They're just completely different storytellers, which in a way just show me how I shouldn't be afraid to have my own unique voice and vision, and should kind of, I think I took mainly the prep side of things in terms of stylistically how I looked at shooting plastic surgery. I think I took a lot from things like Darren Aronofsky's Mother, Christopher Nolan's Tenet and Interstellar as well, in terms of music references and visual references. So I think I just learned a huge amount from that. And it definitely shaped how I view cinema. But I think the best thing I learned was from Wes, which was the prep aspect of things and how important that is.
Yes.
Yeah, he's an incredible man.
That's amazing. I noticed that you had a thanks to him in the credits of plastic surgery, and I thought very interested. Did you get any kind of I guess, was it advice going into the shoot, or was it feedback on the finished film itself?
Basically that. I mean, it was pretty much advice. Obviously I've learned so much from him, and he'd been very kind to me, throughout the years that we were working together, and learning from him and having that opportunity to see how a set like that operates. But also he gave me some great advice kind of going into the shoot, which was just to take every shot one at a time, and I think don't get too boiled down in the end result and what you're trying to achieve at the end. Just take it shot by shot, and that's where the prep comes into power, because most of the film is done in prep, and when it comes to filming it, it's just concentrating on that shot, because that's the most important thing in that moment. And I think that was a really good lesson that he taught me. So he just said, take it one frame at a time. And so I think I took that definitely going forward into the actual shoot.
Nice. Well, let's get into plastic surgery. For our listeners who may not have seen it, do you want to describe what plastic surgery is about?
So plastic surgery. The film is it's a short film about the effects of plastic pollution on the human body. It follows a young doctor who's about to start her maternity leave, but gets thrown back into a world of chaos when suddenly all of her patients start showing up with plastic inside their body, and she's forced to operate on patient to patient, and they run from room to room, and it kind of overwhelms her and her team of surgeons to the point where they realize that they themselves are infected as well. So it's basically, I don't know if you ever saw the short film The Next Floor by Denis Villeneuve.
No, I haven't actually. No.
I really recommend it. It's an amazing short film, and it's very well. I think it's probably underrated, or maybe sometimes it's not as well known. But I think he wrote it or made it after Sicario, so he was particularly in quite a dark frame of mind, I think. But the short is basically about a group of people who are eating in all these endangered species around a dining table, and they're being waited on by these butlers and waiting staff and an orchestra and all these servers. And every time they eat too much food, they break through the floor into the next room underneath. And then all the serving staff and the orchestra have to go down the stairs to then service them again. And then there's amongst that, there's one woman who's new to the table who hasn't, is trying to refrain from eating. So she's trying to refrain from the kind of human consumption and greed. But eventually it overcomes her, and then suddenly the table just start to break through every floor until they never stop. And I guess the message is all about how Mother Nature can't keep up with our consumption of the natural world. And I wanted to, I remember watching that and thinking, I wanted to create this story that was focused on plastic pollution. With my time working for the Ocean Agency, I kind of got an insight into the real horrors that marine life are facing underneath the waves, and I got I kind of got an insight into that, and I realized, every time I was researching it, that actually one of the things that started popping up more and more and more was research into how microplastics are inside us and the health threats that poses, and all these studies that have started to come out recently, and it's very topical at the moment. So I wanted to kind of bring that to light, but in a way that Denis Villeneuve did with this story, using this kind of metaphorical cinema, so that's where the idea kind of came from, to
Yeah.
create plastic surgery and create this kind of plastic disease that's coming from within us, because it is already inside us, and that's the scary thing, that it's this kind of hidden threat that's seeping from within, and that's kind of where the idea came from. So plastic surgery is all about Mother Nature, which is represented by Dr. Terra, who's struggling to keep protecting ourselves from our own toxic creation that's killing us from the inside out. So that's kind of what it's about. That's kind of a long-winded way of saying it.
No, that's really interesting, and really interesting to know where that kind of spark of an idea came from. I'm interested how the writing process kind of looked for this. Do you sit down with that metaphor in mind and try and map out how this might play out with like an actual character, or are you kind of writing the story and the metaphor plays out just symbolically?
I think, to be honest, when I first wrote it, it was during COVID, and we were in lockdown, and I wrote it over the course of a week, I think, or maybe a couple of days, the original script, which was very, very different from what is the final script. As you always
Okay.
know, the scripts always change, but this was very, very different. The original script was no dialogue. It was all orchestra driven, and it followed this team, a Dr. Terra and her team of surgeons, and it went from kind of these three cases in the surgery that then developed into like this montage sequence, which then reached a climax, to the point to which they themselves have become infected. That was the kind of broad strokes of the story, and I started writing it based on that, really, that I wanted to create this kind of piece that represented this kind of plastic threat from within us. But then I started looking at it from a character perspective, because I realized that I think, to make this more personal and to have an audience actually react, I think, and connect with Dr. Terra as a character, I needed it to be a lot more character focused and character driven. So I started adding in dialogue, and that took me on a different journey. I started focusing more on Dr. Terra's perspective, so looking at following her journey in this world. I then started introducing all these other characters, started trying to set the scene. But then it wasn't really until I got Anna involved, Anna Popwell, who plays Dr. Terra, that it really changed, because she came, well, we sent her the script, and I really wanted her to play Dr. Terra. And she got back to us really quickly, and we had a phone call. We had a Zoom call, I think, which was in Bristol. I think I was filming a TV series at the time. So I
Mm.
was at unit base in Bristol in the rain. And we had this great Zoom call where we were on the call for maybe 2 hours. And she told me that she was actually 6 months pregnant. Um,
Yeah, nice. I was going to
and
ask about that. That's really
yeah,
interesting, because that wasn't part of the script originally, right?
no. So that wasn't. So then she basically said, I'm 6 months pregnant. Would you be open to, is that a game changer? Would you be open to, working around that? And I kind of suddenly saw it as a kind of, a light bulb moment, and I realized that I'd found the key that I was looking for to create Dr. Terra's character, and that unlocked everything. So then I was like, absolutely, I think this could be an amazing addition to the story. Let me go away and have a play with it, and come back to you, basically. So then I took the script and spent another few days working the fact that Dr. Terra was in fact pregnant, and then that started to
Mm.
make me think of this idea that she was on her last shift before leaving. So it added this sense that she was about to start this new chapter in life. And then she gets pulled back into this world, and that's where the kind of thrill and tension comes from. And then if you add on to the fact that she's pregnant, she's carrying life. I mean, what better character to represent Mother Nature than a pregnant woman about to
Yeah.
give life, because it shows her kind of fragility as well as her motherhood aspect, but also her vulnerability. And
Mm.
I think throwing a pregnant woman into that world and then making it showing that she herself is infected, it just raises the stakes even higher, because suddenly you're not just thinking about a person, you're thinking about the future, which is this baby, which represents the future of the human species, and how things will go on, and how things will go on forward. So yeah, I think there's a lot of symbolism in the film. And yeah, in terms of writing it, it was Anna really who sparked that change in the script, and then I sent it back to her, and then we workshopped it, and then that's where we came upon the final kind of shooting script that we had.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so that's an amazing story, and just shows that like those little sparks can come from all the people you collaborate with on the short film, and how it can kind of change the course of things. I'm interested as well. Obviously, you wrote it during the pandemic. The
Yeah.
film is set in a hospital that's becoming overwhelmed with this plastic pandemic. Like, how much of that was playing on your mind, I guess, as you were writing the film?
Yeah, massively. I think, writing something during a pandemic where it was such a strange situation for everyone to be locked
Mm.
down in your house, away from friends and family, and everyone was on Zoom calls to try stay connected. Everyone was watching Contagion film because
Yes.
suddenly that became very real. Uh, and all the language that they were saying in that film is the language that they were actually using, which was amazing. And so I think, yeah, I mean, definitely this idea of a disease was on my mind. The idea of this kind of epidemic, pandemic kind of disease focus. So that was definitely something that was playing on my mind when I was writing, and I think that's probably what had an influence on plastic becoming a kind of this hidden disease that comes from within.
Mm.
And so that definitely had a huge impact, I think. And then also the fact that we were locked down, I think weirdly, I think because I originally written the script with no dialogue and it was all orchestra driven, it kind of was very much the case, because I couldn't really think of an actual conversation between people during that time. I kept thinking how, like, I almost lost how an actual normal conversation, how when we had that period where we came back after COVID and everyone had forgotten how to talk to each other because we hadn't talked to
Yeah.
each other in so long, that suddenly everyone's conversations changed. And
Yeah.
so maybe that also is something to do with why I didn't include dialogue. Maybe I was too afraid to approach it at the time, I think maybe.
Have
Um,
you played with like the footage that you have now, and have you made a version of the film without that dialogue? Because I feel, because it's so atmospheric and because it's so driven by the music still, I'm interested. Like, I bet you could make a version of the
oh
film
yeah, I
without
mean,
dialogue still.
you definitely could. I think you could, but it would change the film from being, a kind of character driven Dr. Terra's story
Mm,
to it being more about the event of plastic.
yes.
And I think you could do that. I just don't think it would have the same impact. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
you
true.
need
That's
to
true.
really feel this character and hear her voice. And, there's not much dialogue in there, really. It's
No.
very specific and we tailored it very much to the max amount that we would allow, because I don't like it when you run on with dialogue that's just not necessary. And actually I
Mm,
learned, because we passed the script via so many doctors and medical advisors and people for advice. I really wanted it to be as real as possible, because I feel like when you have a real world and then a very surreal event, the impact of that surreal event feels even more real and true, because it's within a world that doesn't seem so far from reality, and it just makes that surreal more real. And so I feel like that was the whole goal of it. And so we, weirdly, when I was writing the surgeries, I was really scared about how to approach the dialogue at first, because I'm not a
mm,
surgeon. I'm not a
yeah.
medical professional. So I did a lot of research into, you know, what's out there currently. If you look at TV and film, how other surgeries are depicted, medical scenes. I looked at those. I then thought, what, I don't know if I'm getting the real truth here. So then I started to just meet with and talk to doctors and people that I know who are medical, professionals, nurses, and got their insight. And interestingly, turns out they don't talk much.
Yeah.
It's way less than you think. Like everything is very specific, and they all know what they're doing, and it's that's kind of why also I had this idea of it being an orchestra, because it is. I mean, in a hospital, it does feel like an orchestra. Everything is so well in tune together. You know, it really is amazing.
Well, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the music, but I guess in a way that all comes to play in the tone of the film, which is very kind of tense, very atmospheric, and I imagine that's something that's quite difficult to convey in a screenplay, or at least get everybody on the same page in terms of your crew and the orchestra that you're working with. So I'm interested to know, did you have any kind of reference to kind of bring people into the idea that was in your head, like maybe like a mood reel or anything like that?
Yeah, so every time I do a script, I make you know, a pitch deck, pitch pack, basically, which includes everything of how my vision, like what my vision looks like for the film or project, which would include mood boards, it will include references, inspirations, like comparable films, all that kind of stuff. So I created quite an extensive one for plastic surgery, actually, because there was so much research involved with it, from all the research into microplastic studies that's inside us to its effects on our health, you know, and then looking at comparable films. I think when if you're thinking visually, the most comparable was probably Mother by Darren Aronofsky.
Yes.
You've seen Mother, yeah? It's like a, I mean, it's a hell of a film. It's quite
Mm.
shocking, and it's almost quite painful to get through because it plays on your kind of personal space as well as your, like, you know, this idea of something that you built being torn apart by others. So it's, you know, and in terms of the visual nature of it, I loved how Darrenofsky shot it because he only really used 3 shots.
Mm.
He used POV of Jennifer Lawrence, her over the shoulder of her to others, and her close up. So you only had, everything was from her perspective, and that made the film. I mean, you basically follow her character throughout that entire film. And if you watch all the shots as well, you'll realize that, you know, if you look into the detail of it, all the shots where she's talking to a character is over her shoulder. And then when she's talking to it, it's also clean onto that person. But whenever you're doing the other person to her, it's always clean onto her. It's never from behind another character.
Oh
So
wow.
it's really, yeah, if you watch it again, you'll see like
Yeah.
that is, and it's really clever because it basically just keeps you with that specific character and her journey, and you get a lot more, you feel a lot more connected to that person. So I think I took a lot of lessons from that film, and then also visually with the production design. I mean, I wanted the film to tonally get darker and darker and darker, as the film goes on. So, you know, we have that obviously very warm tones at the beginning, with her office, which is, you know, very warm in color, and it has loads of flowers inside that are the gifts from her colleagues and friends for her final shift. You know, basically that goodbye, and so there's a lot of references to. I mean, even the flowers were carnations, which represents Mother's Day,
Mm.
inside her room. So there's loads of symbols and warm tones, and then we get darker as the film goes on, and we also lose a lot of the color in people's faces. It becomes to get a lot more sickly. So we add in the greens and different things, which almost turns the characters. It makes them look more, you know, makes them feel more as if they're ill or unwell.
Yeah.
And so all these things played into the film. And then in terms of music, I mean, I worked really closely with Michael Llewellyn Barker, who's the composer, and we basically, I sent him a bunch of references, um, and one of them was like, we kind of wanted to create this kind of Halloween-esque horror type of theme to the beginning of the film, which
Yeah.
is what you hear for the first time over that slow shot to the phone, and in the end credits as well. And then I used a lot of references from Interstellar for the moment where she's in the hospital ward. And there was a lot of references. There was quite a few from Christopher Nolan, actually. But Interstellar, the docking scene, was the one that I used for the moment of realization where she makes the decision to save herself.
Yes.
And, you know, makes that decision because she has to. And so I think that I use that specific moment in Interstellar that docking scene moment where Matthew McConaughey makes that decision to that he has to save them, and he has to do this. He has to accomplish it by docking this spaceship, and the music is so powerful and inspirational. So I wanted to kind of create that vibe. But yeah, I mean, again, as going back to your original question of how I shared that with the crew, the pitch deck and mood boards were all shared to everyone, and we also had a storyboard as well, which came from working with Wes. I knew that I wanted to have a storyboard for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I worked with an amazing artist called Neil Maguire, and we pulled together and made this storyboard based on the shots that I'd come up with the DOP, and again that was shared to the whole crew. So yeah, it was a kind of like a lot of different factors.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear that kind of collaboration process so early on, and all the kind of different references for style to kind of guide people, especially, I guess, because when you come to film it, you only have a limited amount of time. And another big element of the film is kind of the very kind of visceral moments of body horror, where you've got kind of plastic embedded into people. Obviously, you've got people opened up on surgery tables, and I'm interested to know, how early on did you have to start thinking about kind of the special effects and how they play out in the film?
Yeah, so I'd love to say that I'd love to say we had it planned for years, but in truth, because obviously when Anna came on board, the script was rewritten a lot. I think I knew that I kind of coined this term plastic patients, and I knew that I wanted to have these patients, and we were following these three surgeries at the beginning, which represent all the ways in which plastic enters our body. So if you notice, the first one is a fork from the stomach. It's all about what we eat. Then the second one is around the lungs, which is all PPE equipment. So it's the air that we breathe. And then the final one is the water bottle through the throat. So it's the water that we drink. So those represented those three ways that plastic enters the body. And then we go into the kind of montage moment, and then the final hospital ward, which is the kind of climax chaos, where we have the full result of these plastic patients, where plastic is seeped from within and is now coming through the skin as a visual disease. And so we had this prosthetics designer called Rebecca Wheeler, absolutely incredible, and she kind of came on board quite early on. She did come on board very early on, but we weren't really able to design them till quite last minute, because in terms of time and general schedule of what we could get to this, it meant that we did it quite last minute. But we collaborated together to kind of come up with all these different patients and how the prosthetics would actually look. So we started thinking at everyday plastic items that we interact with and that we see the most, and how could we incorporate that in a very visual way to be coming out of someone's body.
Yeah.
So we started looking at, if you look at the skin and you look at if you look like close up to how it feels, then I kind of started to look at bubble wrap and how that's kind of a plastic skin. So we started looking at how we could almost have bubble wrap, replacing elements of our skin that's coming out as like a rash. Then we started looking at 6-pack rings, how it kind of suffocates, where you see marine life that have 6-pack rings, suffocating their neck or caught around their beak. And we started to think about how you could be suffocating someone with a 6-pack ring. We started really going into the detail of how we could design these. And then Rebecca went away and drew up all the designs and ideas. And then she owns her own prosthetics house. So she started coming up and actually making the prosthetic pieces. But the hardest one was probably the throat gag, which was the third patient. That was really tough because it's quite a difficult one to pull off anyway, but you don't really see it that often. And I'd seen it only in one film, which I think is called The Exorcism or something, which was with Russell Crowe, and they did a shot where a bird came out of a boy's mouth, and you saw it, with this bulge. And I always had the idea of like a snake eating prey, this kind of expanding and contracting of skin.
Oh yeah,
So
I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, so we kind of started to think how we could do that. So then, Rebecca went away and kind of workshopped this idea of a kind of a bladder that was hidden underneath the prosthetic skin. And then the bladder was pulled up by either end by a piece of string, and you would effectively have a loose area of skin, the bladder underneath, and you'd pull the bladder up underneath the skin, which would give you that kind of journeying bottle as it's coming out. And do you know what? It was quite hit and miss because we didn't have time to test it properly, and it was quite last minute, so we had to kind of see what it would look like on the day and roll with it. But Rebecca smashed out the park in it, and it worked really well. So we yeah, that was fantastic. And yeah, so the prosthetics were a huge part of plastic surgery in the end result, but actually when we came to developing the script and the story, body horror was never the main thing that we were looking to. It kind of just came out of nowhere from just naturally from the progression of the film, and suddenly the body horror aspect started to become quite an obvious thing that we had to do because
Yeah.
we had to show it in this visual way. It was the only way to really show it as in that impactful way. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
I guess if you start with the body horror and you're trying to maybe push it too far because you want to try out these special effects, you run the risk of it becoming spectacle and maybe losing the message of the film if you're just trying to shock. Because for a moment I was thinking, are they going to push it further with Dr. Terra's pregnancy? Like how far are we going to go with this
No,
film? And
I
I did
couldn't do
wonder.
that. I couldn't have a plastic baby. Like that would be I mean, yeah. So many people did say, because originally in the script, when Dr. Terra wasn't pregnant, she noticed that she was infected by kind of looking down, and we see plastic protruding from her stomach, and that's where that's where the infection was in her. Then when we developed the character to being pregnant, I couldn't make it come from her stomach, because also the idea is that the baby's meant to represent the future in life, so that's the
Yes.
hope that's left there. And I didn't want to show that was in danger, that specifically, and you don't want to take it that far.
No.
You
Your
know,
intention was not to make like a gory film, I
no,
guess.
no,
No.
not at all. No, not
Yeah.
at all.
No, exactly. I'm interested. Was there anything kind of like left on the cutting room floor? You spoke about the fact that the bottle scene might not have worked out. Was there anything like that didn't make it into the film just because of I guess not working on the day or anything like that?
Well, do you know what I mean, I'm trying to think now. There's a few scenes that we cut. One that we cut, which was kind of very much at the beginning of the film, which is just Dr. Terry's journey around the hospital, which we cut down quite significantly. But then, to be honest, everything was so planned in terms of, this is why this again brings me back to kind of what I learned from Wes, was having everything so planned that at the end of the day, you're hopefully not leaving anything on the cutting room floor, because everything has already been cut in prep. And I, very much knew how the film was going to be edited before we made it, because of the storyboard and how we planned it. So I knew how all the scenes were going to edit together. We definitely changed things around. Like the office scene was originally meant to be the opening of the film, and then it went into the first surgery. But when we started editing it, it just didn't feel, it lost that original excitement of that original surgery, and where it kind of leaves the audience through this false sense of security. And it's a lot more interesting in that hospital environment. And then taking her back to the her office made a lot more sense. So we switched a few things around that, when you look at a script, it didn't really make sense to do that, but then when the edit, it made so much sense. And I mean, there's definitely things that we left out of the montage, because the montage was hilarious. I mean, we basically didn't really have anything scheduled for the montage in the schedule. It was basically shoot it as we were filming. We were
Gotcha.
grabbing bits and pieces for the montage as we were shooting, and any extra time that we had left, if we were lucky to have extra time, was put to grabbing montage beats and bits that we could add. And that was where we went really creative with the montage. I started just attaching the camera onto anything. So I started attaching the camera onto the wheels of a stretcher, creating that circular kind of motion as it was going around the hospital, which cut very well into the kind of circular look of the intercom as well. So there was a lot of that. But yeah, in terms of cutting room, I mean, I mean, we didn't. Yeah, there's a few of the plastic patients that I wish we'd actually shot more of on the day,
Sure.
but we just ran out of time. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that third day we had the most a number of prosthetics that one day, and we shot 44 setups, 44 shots that
Mm.
one day, which was just insane.
Wow.
It's the amount that we were shooting because we were in full handheld mode, and I'd spoken to Helena, the DOP, and I basically was like, these rooms need to be lit 360 to allow us to jump around the room and grab all these bits in this kind of chaotic feel. Because if we were lighting for every setup, we would never have been able to get near the amount that we got. So it was very much quick movements. We kept things really quick and quick and we were filming it quick as well, which is
Yeah.
comes across in the film because we wanted it to come across very gritty, raw, chaotic when it comes to that montage and into the hospital ward. So it worked really well.
What was the full kind of film shoot? Like how many days?
4 days. Well,
Four
technically
days.
three,
Wow.
3.5, because
Mm.
the final day, you always allow the crew enough time to wrap out of the location, and we had so much to pack down. So we
Mm.
never really intended the last day to be a full day.
Yeah.
So we finished with grabbing all the final montage bits that we needed, anything extra that we could grab. All those little bits and pieces that worked really well into the final montage. And then finished with, a good 3 hours or 4 hours to spare in the day. So it's about 3.5.
Wow. And then, so did you wrote the film in 2020 or 2021?
2020.
2020. And then filmed, when did you guys film?
Filmed it last year, 2024.
Wow. There you go.
So there was a long time where the film just kind of sat in a drawer, like many do, because it's
Mm.
it wasn't the right time for me. I hadn't got the right producer, like I hadn't had a producer fully attached properly to help me with the project. So it wasn't really until we got Anna involved and I started to get a full producing team as well behind me to help, getting things kick-started and going.
Yeah.
And that's where it all kind of hit the ground.
There you go. And you've just started your festival run now with the short film. You've just been in LA for Holly Shorts, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So we're in LA for Holly Shorts. That was our world premiere there. So we were there for I was there for like 48 hours, I think. So insane jet
Wow.
lag.
Yes.
It was really fun. It was really fun. And then we ended up winning the best thriller award while we were out there.
Amazing.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah, that was our first festival, and now we've got a bunch more up and coming and loads to hear back from. So it's the start of a very exciting festival run.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are you hoping ultimately that audiences take away from plastic surgery?
I think plastic surgery acts as a kind of call to action and a warning. I think the aim is to really spread awareness about the plastic threat and the threat that it has on us and our public health. And I think it's kind of spreading awareness about that and making people aware of that threat. And that was always the goal, is to spread it to a good audience, on a kind of in a different world, in a different lens, in this kind of cinematic lens, which brings it a lot more to the forefront and in this visual, visceral kind of way. And it's just a very powerful way of getting the message across, to something that is real and is out there and that is in us and people don't know much about. And because when things are hidden, you tend not to think about something until it becomes physical in front of you. So by allowing this to be fully physical and there in your face, there's no hiding from it. So I think we hope that the film will change a few people's perspectives on plastic. It certainly changed mine, and
Yeah.
how I interact with plastic daily, and how I'm always trying to reduce my daily intake of plastic, and what I can do to limit all the single-use plastic and stuff that we use, and just generally trying to avoid it. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained and it's so part of our everyday life, and with things that you wouldn't even think about. But I think then if you start to think about how you interact with plastic and how it's in your life, you can then realize the full scale of how much is around you.
Yeah.
And, I think this film will hopefully be a bit of a wake up call.
I always find it amazing. I appreciate this isn't a film reference, but it's just like an everyday recycling reference. But each week when I'm recycling, like the biggest bag is always plastic. Like
Yeah.
it's insane just how much plastic is needed for like everyday items, and
Yeah.
that bag is
Food
always.
packaging. So, I mean, it's everything. It's everywhere. I mean, but I think I remember talking about this on a different, I think it was a different magazine or something, who asked me, like, where do you think the responsibility lies? And I think it's a kind of dual responsibility. There is a
Mm,
responsibility of the individual to be conscious about the decisions that they're making, and avidly trying to avoid plastic where you can. But then there's also the responsibility on governments and companies and organizations to try and make plastic alternatives and allow the chance for people to do that, because most people don't have the luxury of choice. If you take clean water, for example, there's a huge amount of the world who don't have access to clean water, who have to use bottled and have to use filtered, water that's filtered, and that comes with plastic, and they
mm.
don't have a choice. So it's there's a dual responsibility around it. So I think you have to look at it in that way. And there's always something that you can try and limit in your own life as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. In terms of like audience reactions, appreciate it's very early days, but have there been any kind of unexpected or surprising reactions to the film at all?
Yeah, I mean, we've had great reactions so far, from all the festivals that we're getting into. I think we just got accepted into Norwich. We got Bolton coming up as well. And then Holly Shorts was a great reception. And you can definitely feel the tension in the room when you're in the cinema,
Mm,
which is an amazing feeling. And then when the full weight of the story is revealed, and what the actual meaning behind the title is, you can really hear a pin drop in the audience, and it's quite yeah, it's quite something. And I think, yeah, we've been having a great reaction, obviously winning our first award, which is amazing. And yeah, so it's been great, and hopefully it will continue.
nice, nice. What are your ambitions for the film? I guess Holly Shorts was an Oscar qualifying festival. Is that something you're kind of hoping to gear towards potentially?
I mean, I always find, when it comes to Oscars and all these other things, that I mean, they're bonus. That's a bonus on whatever. But really, for me, the goal was always just to get it to a global audience, as many people as
Yeah.
possible, and in as many countries as possible.
Mm,
Just allow as many people to watch it, around the world. I think that was always that's the main thing. So, you know, our aim was never really to be at the Oscars. Uh, I mean, it's such a thing that you just never really think about. It's so far away from reality. So, that's always just a bonus, a nice thing, but mainly for the crew, I think. But for me, the most important thing is spreading it to a global audience.
yeah, getting as many eyes on it
Yeah,
as possible.
yeah, definitely.
In terms of kind of creative work, is plastic surgery maybe a stepping stone to a feature, or are you developing any more shorts? I know you have your own kind of production company, or are you looking to maybe do some more assistant directing work? What's kind of it? What's in store for you?
At the moment I'm developing various short films. One of them is a environmental animated thriller,
Mm.
and then another one is a kind of live action, again with a kind of environmental thriller type of genre. So they're all in that kind of sphere, interesting. And then developing a bunch of features as well. One in particular that I'm trying to get done, hopefully next year or the year after.
Oh wow.
So yeah, there's lots in development. I think the goal at the moment is to keep directing and keep writing. Really, I think plastic surgery proved to me that it's what I love, and that I just fell in love with directing, and having a chance to create something myself, and
Mm.
and meeting so many amazing people along the way. And I always find with stories like this, this isn't for everyone, but I always find there has to be some kind of impactful message behind it. I always feel that I get more involved. I get more invested in a story or a character if there's a real meaning behind it and something that means something to me and it has a bigger meaning. And so that's, I think, the goal for Nice Guy Pictures, the company as well, is and production company. What I want to do is keep creating content which challenges me every day, but also looks at human and social issues that we face in our ever changing world. And that could be, the moment it's definitely gone via the route of marine conservation and ocean conservation, plastic pollution, but it's also going into a lot of other things. So, yeah, it's an exciting time ahead.
On the podcast, we've been working through our blind spots on the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time list, and we're seeing that a lot of these films are kind of favorites of filmmakers and critics, and you start to see how some of the classics have influenced modern day films, and you start to see some of those references. Now, you've already mentioned a few films already that have influenced plastic surgery directly, but maybe it'd be interesting to know some of your kind of films that have like influenced your directing style overall, or maybe are influencing future works. Sometimes this crosses over with your favorite films, but
oh yeah, the top five, or top 10.
yeah, it doesn't have to be favorite though. They cross over,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I'd say, God, it's so difficult. I actually made a list recently, which is on my phone, it started off as a top 5, and I think it ended up being a top 50. Because it's so hard to down. I'd say the films that really, if I was to list, how many? 5? How many films?
As many as you like. Go for 5. Go on if you've got 5 ready to go.
Myself, I'd say top 5 and the films that really kind of defined, how I look at cinema. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. I mean, I that opened my mind to a whole nother world. And also just that when I was looking at the behind the scenes and how they made it and how they created it, and just looking at how real it looked, all through the miniatures and the miniature unit that they created. They didn't rely on so much like CGI and visual effects. It was a lot of it is real, hugely detailed miniature work, which I found absolutely, that was a huge thing for me. I mean, I'd love to do a project one day which involves miniatures and stop motion as well. So I think with that and Peter Jackson's collaboration of the two, and just the epic nature of it, but also how personal these characters feel. I mean, yeah, just incredible. So yeah, Lord of the Return of the King. 7 by David Fincher. 7 because, like, obviously you see with plastic surgery, it's a thriller. I mean, I love films which are in that kind of crime thriller, very dark. And 7 is just such an incredible film. Even from how it's filmed, I think it's got one of some of the most horrific scenes I've ever seen in cinema history in it. But it really, just the way it was filmed and how gritty it felt, how real it felt, how dark it was, the rain, the acting, the world that he managed to create. So I'm a big David Fincher fan. So yeah, 7 was definitely up there. What else would I say? I'd say Shawshank Redemption. I absolutely love Shawshank Redemption. Is definitely up there for me in terms of just the dialogue. It's just incredible, and the story is amazing, and just how you follow this journey. I mean, yeah, that is a truly amazing film. And then 4 and 5. Ooh, this is tricky because there's so many in my mind. I'd say Gladiator. Gladiator,
Yes,
because
yeah.
it has a personal thing, being filmed here near where I grew up, and was taken to the set as a baby, and so it was kind of, it has a little personal connection in that regard. And it's just such an epic film. I mean, from the music to the characters to the story. I know it's not historically accurate, but I agree with Ridley Scott where he's like, sod it, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. I think it's, he's the filmmaker. He can do what he wants, and people have the choice to watch it if they don't want, so Gladiator is definitely up there. That's probably my 4th. And then my 5th, I'm a huge lover of sci-fi as well. So I love sci-fi just because it's, opens up a whole other world. And there's just no limits with it, really. So, God, if I was to go via that, I'd say either the original Alien, Ridley, or I mean, it's really tricky. I mean, 2001, everyone
Yeah.
picks that because it's amazing, it's groundbreaking. So yeah, it would be between that or Interstellar, as this kind of sci-fi link. And there was also an even darker sci-fi called Event Horizon, which not many people have seen. Well, it's kind
No,
of
I don't.
underrated, but it's a very, very good sci-fi, but it's kind of a horror
Okay.
sci-fi. So it's very different from any other sci-fi that you would have seen around that time.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've seen this one.
yeah,
I'll have
watch
to
it.
check it out.
It's really twisted and dark, and it plays on a lot of horror. Like
Mm.
it's yeah, but it's a great film. I don't think it was like critically it was an amazing, but I remember watching that when I was quite young, and that was definitely opened up my mind into kind of this horror aspect of how thrilling that could be. But yeah, those would be mine, on my list.
Yeah.
I don't know if you expected those ones to come up.
Well, no, some of them have come up before. Shawshank has made its way. I think it's a lot of people's favorite films, isn't it? Shawshank. It has such a high standing. 2001 is in the top 10 of the greatest films of all time list with the Sight and Sound. So a lot of love for that film there. But yeah, no, it's really interesting. Really interesting to get to know those influences on you there.
Yeah, amazing.
Well, thank you, Guy, for coming on the podcast and spending time talking about plastic surgery. Really loved your insights into the kind of filmmaking process there, and kind of the references and different elements of the film and how they all came together. It was really interesting. So thank you for your time.
No worries. Thank you for having me on, Alex. Thank you. It was lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Thank you. Thank you again to Guy there for sharing his time with us there. It was on a bank holiday Monday, so I do really appreciate it. Really interesting to get to know the kind of more intricate details of plastic surgery. It is a fascinating short film that is, I don't want to even say a horror film because that is not the intention at all. It is very much a film with a message, but plays on the kind of tropes of a kind of horrific scene within a hospital. So, as you heard, it's making its way to a few UK festivals soon, so make sure to go check it out. It is really interesting, and it will be very interesting to see kind of Guy's trajectory going forward, having already worked with some major filmmakers, how he can kind of take that advice and, being able to learn from those creatives forward in his own career. So that has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle. We also have a Film Angle playlist. If you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.